My guest today is Faith Elicia, who suffered for many years with an eating disorder. In today's episode, she and I talk about her book, Do You See What I See? That not only tells the tales of her ups and downs on a road to recovery, but it's also an interactive workbook of personal reflections, strategies, and tools for anyone suffering from an eating disorder. Welcome to my show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I am honored. My listeners don't know this, but this is her first appearance. So welcome to Lifeology. We are so excited that you're here. You have so much to teach us. And so I just want you to relax because you're going to do amazing.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations, first off, on the publication of your book. It was just published. So that is absolutely wonderful. How does it feel to see your book in print?
I love it. I'm actually a romance writer as well.
Oh,
so this
okay.
is, yes, so hence the handcuffs. So this is very new for me to venture into the nonfiction world and actually put my story out there, because for many years I shelved this, just a lot of shame and just not ready to take the leap.
Yeah, and that happens for a lot of people, especially when eating disorders or many body dysmorphic type of disorders, and we'll get to that in just a second. But the other really cool thing I learned about you as well is we are neighbors. I had no idea that you were this close to me in Florida, so that's kind of cool. We'll have to get together for coffee sometime. With a mask, of course.
With a mask.
Yes. So for 9 years now, since the time of this recording, you struggled with an eating disorder. Would you be willing to talk about your journey, how it started, the highs and lows, and then we'll transition into the book?
Sure, of course. I do believe it started in my 20s, but it just wasn't to the point of I was able to function with them. So it was like a functional eating disorder. After the birth of my third child, the stress was overwhelming because I have a full-time job and just managing everything. I had postpartum. I also have an anxiety disorder, and I went to a psychiatrist who specializes in anxiety. But what was slowly happening was it was morphing into an eating disorder. Okay. And it just kept becoming, well, on the scale, and well, when it gets to this point, then there's an issue. But then when it gets to that point, no, when it gets to this point. And finally he told me, I treat anxiety disorders. I don't treat eating disorders. And he released me as a patient. Devastation.
How was that? I was going to say that because here you're thinking one thing, like, oh, I'm fine. And then to hear a licensed professional say that to you, I mean, then you can't hide it anymore.
I'm always honest with the professionals that are helping me. So I never hold anything back.
Sure.
I think it was fear. It was more like, I've just bared my whole life to you, and now you're throwing me out. But he did the greatest gift, because I did see a therapist at the same time, and she was having me come in 3 times a week, but not addressing the eating disorder, which is why I feel it's very important when you have an eating disorder to see someone that has certification in eating disorders, because it's its own little mess.
Yes.
And she really enabled it. So the psychiatrist sent me to another psychiatrist who specializes in that. I just wasn't big on him, and I decided I need help. So my mother made calls, and I went for an interview, and I started treatment 3 days later.
Wow. Was it a residential treatment?
It was outpatient, because I had my youngest was little at the time. So I still have to be mom and work and all that. So I would go in the day, and then I was home at night with the kids. And I actually went to treatment 2 times. So eating disorders, yes, it's I just stress, hence my Christian gray bear, that it's not black and white, that there's many shades of gray, and eating disorders are just up and down. And so I went to treatment twice, and it's okay.
Yeah, of course it is. And I thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, it's your journey is very powerful, and I know in this episode is going to reach so many people. I know for me, as a licensed psychotherapist, I've worked with many different people and different types of individuals, and I've always referred out for eating disorders because it is, like you said, it's a whole, you have to be specialized in that. It's because a lot of the treatment modalities that work for other things, it's a whole ball of wax, if you will. And so I'm so glad to hear that you also, as an advocate for this, know that you have to find someone who specializes in that. Even if, I was trained in it, but I don't specialize in it. So we took classes in it. But once again, I'm so glad to hear that you were able to find the help that you need. So there are different types of eating disorders. Would you be comfortable telling us which type you had?
Sure. Anorexia.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
I got to a very low birth weight. I got to a very low body weight. I went to support groups for many years for women with eating disorders. And I guess the reality was when one of the women in the group died.
Oh my gosh.
And then it's like, okay, so this is not a joke. I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And it's, it's easy when, well, that'll never happen to me. But when you see it happen to someone you know, yeah, it hits home. It's not a joke.
Yeah. From that moment, and I'm so sorry for the family and friends who lost that person. Was that the moment for you that says, I really need to buckle down even more?
Do you know it was not? The eating disorder is very manipulative and conniving.
Yeah.
I come from, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. So there was addiction, alcoholism in my family. I tend to view my recovery as a one day at a time, that I just have to be aware of it, because like any addiction, it can just come back in. So, I could identify, and I'm so sad about this girl, but in a few days later, Ed comes right back in. Ed is how I refer to my eating disorder, and just go back right into old behaviors. The second time I went to treatment, I'm going to say the most growth has happened in the last 2 years.
Really?
So I
What
really,
happened?
even after both rounds of treatment, even in treatment, I can tell you that an eating disorder is very conniving, and I could just do things how I want them, but make it seem like I'm doing it your way, but I'm really doing it Ed's way.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
You have to really be ready. And the therapist that I started with right before treatment and continued with, she specializes in eating disorders. She has just pushed me to go deeper than I've ever gone. And I could say I've been in therapy for 30 years.
Wow.
She has, I don't know, it's just, I went to the mindfulness-based stress reduction. I just, after that, I can't live like this anymore. That's how I felt, with this anxiety and this eating disorder running my life, just tired. And how
did it affect your parenting?
I was always open with my kids. When I went to support groups, because I think it's important that they know mommy's trying to get help. I'm not going to hide it, because I was 16 when I learned my father was an alcoholic. So for half my life, I just think my dad's raving lunatic. All dads are evil and yell at people. And he did find AA, but I learned from that it's very important for my kids to know that, when you have an issue, you get help with it.
Yes.
So
awesome.
My kids are very supportive. Very supportive.
Congratulations. Let's transition into your book. Do you see what I see? What was the name? I mean, for me, I understand as a clinician, but what was the title? What does that mean to you?
So, hold on. So do you see what I see? So when I was in treatment, we did art therapy. My first round of treatment, and I really thought it was like BS at the beginning. I say that in the book. I'm like, what the hell is this? But it turned out to pretty much be this book over 9 years of writing. When I first entered treatment, the art therapist, she had me draw a picture of how I thought I looked. And then she, it's against the wall, and then she traced me.
Oh, she traced you. Oh, goodness.
So my lines were very different from her lines.
Oh, goodness. That's powerful. Oh, my gosh.
My body dysmorphia was the perception was so wrong. I told her, that's not right, you're wrong. Please do it again. I think she did it 3 times, because I kept saying, you're wrong, you're not tracing it right. It was very hard for me to fathom that I was that thin. I didn't see it. And actually, the really cool thing is, in the back of the book, I see what I see, because today, thank God, I've done the tracing again. Just I had my husband like hold it up. I just know what I look like today, so I see what I see, and that's where it came from. Just because it's everyone can tell you look a certain way, but it's how you see yourself.
Exactly.
And I didn't see myself, and today I see so much more than what I see in the mirror. And this has been a lot of work, but so worth it. I can't stress it enough. So worth it.
Congratulations. That warms my heart to hear that you have the awareness and you see yourself as you truly are, a beautiful woman. The whole aspect of the workbook, tell me more about that. So it's highs and lows for you, and then just the workbook itself. So someone, because we know men suffer from eating disorders as well. So men and women reading this, walk me through the process for them.
When I first entered treatment, we were told to read 2 books. One is The 4 Agreements, which I think is like one of the greatest books ever.
Did you know that he was on my show? Did you watch that?
Oh my gosh. I love him. I just bought the companion book.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing. Yeah. Love him.
He's fantastic. Yeah.
So what I found was the books I was reading, everyone was like recovered. And for me, it was like, well, I'm never going to get that. That is so far away. So I had to start looking at it as I'm in recovery. It's, for me, and everybody has to view their eating disorder as it is. Whatever helps you to recover, that's amazing. For me, I view it as an addiction. It's a one day at a time process, just like my dad who went to AA and my sister who went to NA. I work at this one day at a time.
Yes.
So I felt with the workbook, there was nothing out there. It was all like somebody's story. And as I was writing this, I'm like, wouldn't it be amazing if we had something that was we, not me? Because I do view recovery, it's a we thing. I can't do this alone.
Yes. Correct.
I need support of others, my therapist, my supports. So it's a we process. So I thought a book that is we would be helpful because you're not alone. Yeah. And the key for this is you're not alone. We all have these feelings. It's scary. It's up and down. And just putting myself out there at my lowest, just for others to identify that you're not alone. I honestly thought I was different. Nobody could feel the amount of anxiety that I have inside on a daily basis. There's no way. Nobody could feel like me. It's a very selfish, addiction, like any addiction. Sure, it's self-absorbing. But we're not alone. So I
love...
Go.
And I love the fact that you normalize that, because there's nothing new under the sun. We all have something. And so there's the recognition that on the spectrum of life, we also have a struggle somewhere, or many struggles somewhere. And there's also, when you can put a name to it, then it removes the power of what that is, because now like, oh, this is an eating disorder. Oh, this is body dysmorphia. Oh, this is anxiety. And so when you can see what it is, then it doesn't have that power. And so that's the beautiful thing about your book, is it really, like I said, it really normalizes it, but it also helps people walk through the process as if someone was in it, as opposed to the other side. And I think that's great, because the other side is always going to come, but you can't get to the other side unless you start where you are today. And so just like you said, every moment is an opportunity to decide what's healthiest for me. It's not what's better or worse, it's what's healthier for me right now. Who I am tomorrow, I'm going to have different opportunities to make different choices. So in this moment, I can be the healthiest I am now. And in this moment, I can be the healthiest I am now. And so that's the recognition that we don't have to think further out than the moment, because in the moment, that's sometimes all we can handle. So I'm so glad to hear that your book addresses the complexity of it, but also gives them a lot of different tools and techniques to be able to overcome their eating disorder. Walk me through some of those techniques. I know you've gone through a lot, and you're talking about mindfulness. What were some of the things that you have in your book?
The key one, the first thing that really got me like on this healthier journey was the mindfulness-based stress reduction, that 8-week course. Going back to what you just said, when you're stuck in the grips of an eating disorder and someone's like, well, just eat your lunch, make the next right choice. it's so brutally hard to do that
Yes.
because the eating disorder voice it's just screaming in your head.
Pervasive.
It's awful. So to just take a step, it's just so scary. So mindfulness was, I think, my first step of, you know what, I'm not worried about lunch right now because right now I'm sitting with you. So I'm in this moment, I'm safe. You know, it's moment by moment. And I just, when the mind starts, because my mind loves to project, we come back into this moment.
Yes.
So it started with the mindfulness. And I remember we had to watch videos, and one was by Shauna Shapiro, psychologist. And she said, what you practice grows stronger. And I just kept telling myself that what I practice grows stronger. If I keep practicing negative thinking, feeding into eating disorder, it's going to keep getting bigger. If I practice, okay, I'm in this moment, just for right now, I can take a deep breath. It really was very helpful for me at the beginning. And I loved it. So then from that, I went to the 8-week self-compassion class, the Kristen Neff course. I threw myself into just classes to learn. And the psychologist teaching neuroplasticity and like what I can change my brain, magic. Because I really thought that I'm stuck like this for the rest of my life. And I think I was surviving and not living. And I don't.
I think that, the recognize that the emotional forecasting, so that's what we call it in psychology, is you take the quote negative feelings you're feeling right now and you project out into the future and say this is how it's always going to be. And that's one of the cognitive dissonances, or in other words, a thinking error that we all have. So a thinking error is essentially kind of like a lens you put over your thought and your perception, and that becomes your reality. And so there are actually 15 common thinking errors, and one of those is emotional forecasting. And so I feel it, therefore, must be true. It must always be this way. And that's something that we all struggle with at times. Let me back up. So what would be the one today that you practice all the time that really stood out for you, that helps you the most?
Meditation.
Meditation.
But meditation didn't come easily at first. I actually just wrote an article, and it's, small steps leading to recovery milestones. It started with the mindfulness, and then we built on self-compassion. So with all of this, and then I took a 6-week happiness mindfulness class, met these wonderful ladies, because I'm very kind of introverted, shy. So I'm not, I keep to myself as a writer. Like I'm very content just sitting here in my happy place, doing my thing. So Zoom has been wonderful. So I stepped out of my comfort zone and created, we have a Monday night group with my happiness ladies.
Oh, nice.
It's each thing building, and I look at myself like as a hybrid. So I have to recharge. So when I wake up, I have to meditate and get myself set. Because that old thinking is the first thing that's there when I wake up. It's just programmed. So I have to reset, and then the refueling with the mindfulness, self-care, absolute necessity. I used to think self-care meant selfish. No. Why can I take care of everyone in my family? What about me? I come first right now because I cannot take care of my family if I can't take care of myself.
Correct. One thing I always tell people is you think of like when you fly, the flight attendant will say, put your mask on first before you help anybody else. And that's how I look at life. Self-care is putting your mask on first. It doesn't mean it's an hour or 4 hours of doing something. It's just simple reset, reframe, put that mask on, and then you're able to help everybody else. And so I love to hear that when it comes to self-care, you have that awareness that in order to help your family and to support and provide for your family, you needed to take that self-care. And that's something we'll probably talk about later on in the show. But I'm so glad to hear that. And I think that's something that many of us, whatever we struggle with, don't do enough of that. And so with the mindfulness aspect of it, the happiness aspect of it, the self-compassion, all of that is the mental reconstruction of how to learn how to implement self-care. That's I think that's a really powerful technique that everyone, I think, listening should look more into and figure out what that is. And obviously they can learn about it in your book as well. What's next for you?
What's next for me?
Yeah.
More romance, because that's my happy place.
I love
And, you know, my father
That's great.
passed away 3 years ago, and he was in AA for many, many years. And he was so of service. So that I never thought that I would have full love for him, forgiveness, and he had Alzheimer's. And his last year of life, my biggest thing was to have complete love and forgiveness for my father. I mean, even to hug him was hard for me. And I did, and it's just pure love. I have pure love for my dad. He did the best he could with with what he learned from his parents.
Sure.
And I just think it's important that we're not the trauma we come from our past, like we can break free of that. Yes. It doesn't have to hold us back as bad as it is. And if I could give anything today, it's what you practice grows stronger. I keep brainwashing myself with these new things. Be in the moment. We drove to Orlando this weekend. My husband was a little moody driving because our older son was following us. I honestly put on a 10-minute meditation in the car. Like, that's self-care.
Yes.
It's become habitual that, oh, this is affecting me. I need to do this. Keep practicing and practicing. It becomes the norm.
Yes.
And when it feels good, I want more.
I love that. And that most people don't know this, but it actually takes 66 times for us to do something to become a habit. So you've practiced this so many times and now it's habitual for you. And it's the same type of thing when it comes to our thought structures. Whatever we think about, just like you learned, the more we think about something, the more we train ourselves to think about something. And so if we don't want to think about something, you change the habit and think about something else. And I know that sounds trivial, and it is in the way I said it because it takes a lot of work. But once you get the concept down, just like you've done, you're able to move yourself in the direction that's healthiest for you. With that in mind, I had such a wonderful time talking with you today. Thank you so much for being a wonderful guest on my show today. If my listeners want to find out more information about you and to purchase your book, Do You See What I See? Where will they find this information online?
So the book is on Amazon. We have ebook, black and white, and color. Also at my website, faithelicia.com. I have a Facebook, Faith Elicia, and then on Instagram, it's Faith Elicia G. But it's also on really any platform. And what I really like about it is it's an interactive workbook. So, you know, if you journal about something today, you can look back and do the same exercise in a year and say, wow, look how much I've grown. Or, wow, look what I still need growth in. And none of it's bad. We learn, we grow. Exactly. So it's no more black and white. It's all gray.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Faith Elicia, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest on my show today. You inspired me and I learned a lot today, so thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so happy. Thank you.